Take a look at the new results of an analysis by the Tax Policy Center of Trump's proposed tax plan. Now, this is from about a month and a half ago. He had these bullet point lists of some of his priorities for taxes. Now, we've, over the past year or two, given you multiple breakdowns of what his tax plan is likely to look like. At one point, I went back through some of Trump's old books and looked at his principles and what tax reform should look like. And the numbers have always been stark. These newer ones also extremely stark. The tax cuts included in the Trump administration's outline for tax reform released in April could cut federal revenues by as much as $7.8 trillion over 10 years. And the benefits would go almost exclusively to the top 5%, not the top 10%. Forget the top 10% business. That's from like 5-6 years ago. Now we're focusing on at least the top 5%. Just for context, this is a smaller tax cut. A $3.4 trillion tax cut would amount to about 12% of GDP by 2027, slightly larger than all the tax cuts George W. Bush passed while in office. That's less than half as big as the expected effect of these tax cuts. And that's bigger than all of the George W. tax cuts.
So the reason they use the $3.4 trillion number is if you believe the Republicans and give them every benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
And that they're going to take away loopholes. So some of those loopholes, I think they will take away because that actually helps the middle class more, and they don't really care about helping the middle class.
Yeah.
Some of them, there's no way they're taking away. But if you gave them all the benefit of the doubt and said, okay, so we'll give you credit for those. The amount of the tax cut goes from 7.8 trillion to only $3.4 trillion, which goes almost all to the rich.
Yeah.
And so the best case scenario is for the Republicans who claim that they care about balanced budgets, they're going to put a $3.4 trillion hole in the budget.
And by the way, it's not just assuming that they'll do the loopholes. It's also giving them the benefit of the doubt on their dynamic scoring, where you believe all their propaganda about how much these tax cuts are going to help the economy. If you assume a bunch of economic growth that has not been proven, and we've seen under George W. Bush, how great did the economy do after these tax cuts? Well, the economy fell apart just a few years later. So I don't know why we would give them the dynamic scoring, but they did to get to that $3.4 trillion. So I think it's much more likely to be near the $8 trillion mark.
So if you support these tax cuts, you are never, ever allowed to talk about balanced budgets again because you don't believe it, you don't come close to believing it, all you want is tax cuts for the rich, and that's fine, just own up to it.
Yeah, and now let's look at how they prioritize different classes in America. The overall plan would give the average family earning under $25,000 per year a $40 tax cut.
Wow.
Or a 0.3% boost in after-tax income, which look, hey, that's nice. You take your spouse out, go see Wonder Woman or something with your $40. I mean, you're not gonna get popcorn or soda or anything like that, but you can maybe see the movie in most parts of the country. Looks a little bit different for the richest Americans. The top 0.1% earning above $3.4 million a year would get an average tax cut of $937,700 or a 13.3% boost in after-tax income. They're already earning over $3 million a year, and you're just gonna toss another $1 million at them.
Yeah.
Enjoy that while you're at the movies.
So just a little bit of context there. The top 0.1% starts at $3.4 million, right? So the reason why the tax cut is on average nearly $1 million is because it goes all the way up to the billionaires.
They'll throw off the numbers a little bit.
Right, so having said that, look, $1 million tax cut for the richest people in the country is unreal and painful to think about.
On average, of course, someone like Sheldon Adelson is gonna get far more, obviously.
Yeah, and even a tiny proportion of another tax cut from the healthcare bill gives Sheldon Adelson, I think, like $40 million
a year.
Right. This will give him way more than that. So but that's why the percentages matter. So if the numbers were huge, but they said, hey, look, you know what, for the poor, it actually is a bigger percentage of their income that we're helping. So yeah, the rich are getting a lot too, but what we're really trying to do is help the poor, most importantly, the middle class, right? But that is not the case. For the poor and the middle class, you get a tiny, tiny percentage help. Not just raw numbers, percentage-wise, tiny, minuscule. But the rich get a huge percentage break when they need it the least. 13.3% of their income goes right back to them. And it's a giant giveaway. So I just want to give you last couple of things here. So if you look at the tax cuts that are proposed here, 61% of the tax cuts goes to the top 1%. 61%. So only 39% have to be shared by 99% of us, okay? So when they say it's for all of us, understand that's not true. 61% goes straight to the very richest people in the country. But even that is not that big a deal. But when you look at the effects of the cut and the revenue raisers in the plan, for the top 5%, they get 94.8% of all of the benefits. So the 5% richest people in the country get 95% of the benefits of this tax cut. And the other 95% of us get only 5% of the benefits. So if you ever had a doubt about what the Republican Party stands for and who they stand for, that is now resolved. That you cannot argue that this is anything but a gigantic, historic giveaway to the rich. So if you're a Republican, don't ever talk about wealth redistribution again. Because you love wealth redistribution, you just want to redistribute it to the top. And lastly, the corporate taxes are also going to be cut. In fact, that is going to be the largest cut in the entirety of this plan is for corporate taxes, because poor old corporations, which happen to give billions of dollars in donations to the politicians who are passing these laws, they just don't get enough of a break. John, in the golden era of the 1950s, the taxes on corporations weren't that bad. That's why we were so successful. That's why we're the number one economy, and we grew the way that we did. And now they're so overburdened by taxes. So let me show you the reality. So here's a chart. In 1952, corporations paid 32% of all taxes in America. In 2015, they were down to less than 11% of taxes.
That's before Trump.
They reduced their tax burden by 2/3. And that money does not go away. That is wealth redistribution. It's a pie chart. It goes to other parts guess where it goes to? It mainly went to the payroll tax for social insurance and retirement. And the payroll tax is paid by the middle class. They redistributed their tax burden from corporations to you, and now they come back and go, oh, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Now they're going to cut corporate taxes from 35% to 15%. So now you'll pay an even bigger burden of taxes, and it's a win-win for them. Because then they turn around and go, aren't you paying so much taxes? And you go, oh my God, you're right, I am. So let's cut taxes. But what they don't tell you is they're going to cut taxes not for you, but for the rich and for corporations. So it's a double win for them. You get mad at the Democrats when in fact they just pulled off the biggest wealth redistribution of your lifetime. TYT membership gets you commercial-free Young Turks. Download it, stream it, podcast it, get all the network shows, and support independent media. TYTnetwork.com/join.